Save some for me next time, she said. The chaos in the cafeteria continued. But at their table, the small group of aliens, by the time evening came, Do-Hyun's face was everywhere. The video of him eating the beetle had been shared across the Academy's network, and from there, it had spread to the wider galactic communication systems. Within hours, billions of beings had watched a human consume a deadly Earth creature like it was nothing. Do-Hyun found out about his sudden fame when he returned to his dormitory room. As he walked through the hallways, other students stopped to stare at him. Some bowed. Some saluted. Some simply turned and ran in the opposite direction. "What is happening?" he muttered to himself. When he reached his room, he found Yuna waiting outside his door. She was looking at her communication device with wide eyes. "Have you seen the network feeds?" she asked. "No. Why?" She turned her device toward him. On the screen was a video of himself eating the beetle in the cafeteria. Underneath the video was a title that had been translated into Standard Galactic. Human apex predator consumes deadly Earth creature in public displays. Video had been viewed over 4 billion times. Do-Hyun felt his legs go weak. "What? No, that cannot be right." "It is right," Yuna said. "You are famous now. The most famous human in the galaxy." She scrolled down to show him the comments. Thousands upon thousands of messages from aliens all over the known universe, expressing shock, horror, admiration, and fear. "I cannot believe humans are real," one comment read. "My pod family refuses to believe this video is not fake," said another. "I have studied 37 species in my career, and I have never seen anything as terrifying as a human," wrote someone with a scientific title. Do-Hyun sat down heavily on the floor. His head was spinning. All he had done was eat a beetle. A snack. A simple, everyday snack that millions of people on Earth ate regularly. "This is too much," he said. "I just wanted lunch." Yuna sat down beside him. "I know, but the galaxy does not see it that way. To them, you did something impossible. Something legendary." As they sat there, Do-Hyun's communication device began to buzz. Notification after notification flooded in. Interview requests from galactic news networks. Messages from scientific organizations asking for research opportunities. Even a few messages from what appeared to be alien military commanders, inquiring about human dietary habits. "I need to hide," Do-Hyun said. "Too late for that," Yuna replied. "Look," she pointed down the hallway. A crowd of aliens was forming at the end of the corridor. They kept their distance, but they were clearly there to see Do-Hyun. Some held signs with messages written on them. Some had brought offerings, like they were approaching a deity. One sign read, "Teach us your ways, human." Another said, "How do we become like you?" A third simply showed a drawing of a beetle with a red X through it and the words, "Never again." Do-Hyun buried his face in his hands. "This cannot be happening." Yuna patted his shoulders sympathetically. "Maybe it will die down in a few days." It did not die down. Over the following week, the story of the humans who ate deadly insects became the biggest news story in the Galactic Union. Professor Velix was interviewed by every major science publication, discussing his findings about human dietary habits. His lecture notes were published and became the most downloaded document in the history of the Galactic Academic Network. The 12 human exchange students at the Academy became celebrities overnight. They could not walk anywhere without being followed by crowds of curious aliens. Some wanted to touch them. Some wanted to ask questions. Some simply wanted to stand in their presence and feel the aura of what they called apex predator energy. Do-Hyun tried to explain to everyone that he was not special, that eating insects was normal on Earth, that he was just an ordinary student who had come to the Academy to learn about the galaxy. Nobody believed him. That is exactly what an apex predator would say. Vaughn told him one day, "You are so powerful that you do not even recognize your own power." It is both inspiring and terrifying. The effects of the incident spread far beyond the academy. On other planets, humans who had been living and working quietly suddenly found themselves the center of attention. News reports analyzed human history, looking for evidence of their predatory nature. Scientists debated whether humanity should be reclassified from intelligent species to apex omnivore. Political leaders discussed whether humans were a threat to galactic peace. And everywhere, the video of Dong-Yun eating the beetle was played again and again. 2 weeks after the incident, Dong-Yun received a message from the Galactic Council itself. He was being invited to speak before the council about human culture and dietary habits. It was the highest honor any being could receive. "I do not want to go," he told Yuna. "You have to go," she replied. "If you refuse, they will think humans are planning something. They will become even more afraid." Da-Hyun knew she was right, so he agreed to attend. The day of his speech, he stood before a massive chamber filled with representatives from 1,000 different species. Their eyes, their sensors, their consciousness projections, all focused on him. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "My name is Park Do-yen," he said. "I am a human from the planet Earth. I am not an apex predator. I am not a legendary creature. I am just a student." The chamber was silent. "On my planet, there are 8 billion humans. We live our lives, just like you. We go to school. We work. We spend time with our families. We laugh and cry and dream of the future." He paused, looking around at the thousands of faces watching him. "Yes, we eat insects. To us, it is not strange. It is just food. We eat many things that might seem strange to other species. But that does not make us predators. It makes us survivors." He thought about his home, about his mother and father, about his grandmother's garden where centipedes crawled in the shadows, about the night markets where vendors sold fried scorpions and silkworm larvae. "Earth is a difficult planet," he continued. "It is full of dangers. But we did not survive by being the strongest or the fastest. We survived by being adaptable. We learned to use everything around us. We learned to turn challenges into opportunities." He looked directly at the council leaders in the front row. "When we met the Galactic Union, we were afraid. Everything was new and strange. But we did not let fear control us. We adapted. We learned. We opened ourselves to new experiences and new friendships." He smiled, feeling more confident now. That is what makes us human. Not our ability to eat insects. Not our survival on a deadly planet. But our willingness to face the unknown and find a way to live with it. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, applause began. It started small, just a few beings clapping or making approving sounds. But it grew and grew until the entire chamber was filled with the sound of appreciation. Do-Hyun felt relief wash over him. Maybe, just maybe, the galaxy was starting to understand. After his speech, many representatives approached him to shake his hand or thank him for his words. But the most memorable encounter came from a small, elderly alien with silver skin and kind eyes. "I have lived for 300 standard years," the alien said. "I have seen species rise and fall. I have witnessed wars and peace and everything in between." Don waited politely for the alien to continue. "But I have never met a species quite like yours," the alien said. "You are fascinating, terrifying, and perhaps the most hopeful beings I have ever encountered." "Hopeful?" Dong-Hyun asked, surprised. "Yes, because if your species can survive Earth, then perhaps there is hope for all of us. Perhaps any obstacle can be overcome." The alien smiled, patted Do-Hyun on the shoulder, and walked away. Do-Hyun stood there for a long moment, thinking about what the alien had said. Then he pulled out his communication device and sent a message to Yuna. The speech went well. Heading back to the academy now. A reply came quickly. Good. I saved you some dinner. It is not insects, but it is the closest thing to Korean food I could find. Dahyun smiled and began the long walk back to his dormitory. He was still famous. He was still followed by cameras and crowds. He was still seen as a legendary apex predator by billions of beings across the galaxy. But in that moment, he was just a hungry student looking forward to a good meal. And really, was that not the most human thing of all? He walked on, the 3 moons of Vareth rising in the purple sky above him. Behind him, the galaxy buzzed with stories of his kind. Ahead of him, the unknown future waited. Dahyun did not know what would come next. But he knew one thing for certain. Whatever challenges the galaxy threw at humanity, they would adapt. They would overcome. And if necessary, they would eat whatever stood in their way. That was just what humans did. The cafeteria of the Galactic Academy was a massive circular room with a domed ceiling made of transparent crystal. Through it, students could see the purple sky of planet Vareth and the 3 moons that orbited slowly above. Long tables made of shiny metal filled the space, and food dispensers from 100 different worlds lined the walls. Dahyun and Yuna walked through the entrance and immediately felt the change. Normally, the cafeteria was loud and busy. Students from every corner of the galaxy would eat, talk, and laugh together. But today, something was different. As soon as the 2 humans entered, the noise began to die down. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Forks and tentacles and feeding tubes paused in midair. Every eye, every sensor, every sensory organ in the room turned toward them. Yuna noticed it first. Why is everyone staring at us? She whispered. Dahyun looked around. She was right. Hundreds of aliens were watching them with expressions that ranged from curiosity to fear to something that looked almost like awe. Word must have spread already, he said quietly, about what we said in class. They walked toward the food dispensers, trying to ignore the stares. But it was impossible. Students moved out of their way as they passed. Some even stepped back against the walls, pressing themselves as far away as possible. A Marvani student was standing at one of the dispensers. When it saw the humans approaching, it quickly grabbed its tray and hurried away without even collecting its food. Yuna sighed. This is going to make lunch very awkward. They reached the dispensers and began looking at the options. Most of the food was alien, designed for digestive systems very different from human ones. But there were a few things labeled as safe for carbon-based bipeds, which the humans had learned was the galactic term for creatures like themselves. Dahyun selected something that looked like a sandwich. It was purple, and the bread was spongy, but it was the closest thing to human food available. Yuna chose a bowl of something that resembled noodles. Though the noodles were blue and moved slightly on their own, they found an empty table and sat down. Immediately, the tables around them emptied. Students grabbed their trays and moved to other parts of the cafeteria, leaving a large circle of empty space around the 2 humans. I feel like we have a disease, Yuna said, poking her moving noodles with a fork. A very dangerous disease, Dahyun agreed. The disease of eating bugs. They both laughed, but the laughter sounded strange in the silent space around them. A few minutes later, a small group of students approached their table. They moved slowly and carefully, like prey animals approaching a predator's den. At the front of the group was the green-skinned student from their class. "Excuse me," it said nervously. "May we sit with you?" Dahyun was surprised. "Of course. Please, sit down." The group sat across from them, keeping a careful distance. There were 4 of them in total. The green-skinned student, Aquilin, a small furry creature that Dahyun did not recognize, and a tall being made entirely of crystal. "My name is Vorn," the green-skinned student said. "I am in your xenobiology class." "I remember you," Yuna said. "You sat in front of us." Vorn nodded. Its large black eyes were fixed on the humans with intense curiosity. "What you said in class today has spread throughout the entire academy. Everyone is talking about it. We noticed," Dalhyun said dryly. "We came because we have questions," Vorn continued. "Many questions. About humans. About your planet. About the insects you eat." The furry creature beside Vorn made a small squeaking sound. It seemed unable to speak standard galactic, so Vorn translated. "Zik wants to know if it is true that you eat the venomous creatures raw," Vorn said. Yuna shook her head. "No, not raw. We cook them first. The cooking destroys the poison and makes them safe." The crystal being spoke. Its voice sounded like chimes in the wind. "Our translators recorded everything from the lecture. You mentioned many types of insects that humans consume. But are there others? Are there more creatures that you eat?" Dalyin thought about it. There were so many he could mention. Grasshoppers, crickets, ants, beetles, worms. The list was very long. "Yes, there are many others," he said. "Insects are eaten in almost every human culture. They are a good source of protein." The Quillen's tentacles curled inward, a sign of distress in its species. "But why? Why would you choose to eat such dangerous creatures when there are surely safer foods available?" Yuna answered this one. "Insects are not dangerous to us if we prepare them correctly. And they are everywhere on our planet. They are easy to find and easy to catch. For thousands of years, before humans learned to farm, insects were an important food source." "You have eaten them for thousands of years?" Vorn asked. "Yes, long before we had technology or cities, we ate insects. It is part of our history." The group of aliens exchanged glances. They seemed to be struggling to understand. "On my world," Vorn said slowly, "there are no insects. There are no small creatures with shells and many legs. When I first saw the images in class, I did not know what I was looking at. My brain could not process it. That is true for many of us," the crystal being added. "The life forms on our planets are very different from those on Earth. We have never encountered anything like your insects." Dahyun realized something important. These aliens were not just afraid of insects because they were dangerous. They were afraid because they had never seen anything like them before. The creatures were completely alien to them, as strange and terrifying as the aliens themselves had seemed to humans when first contact was made. "I understand," Doyun said kindly. "When humans first met other species from the galaxy, we were also afraid. Everything was new and strange. But we learned to accept the differences." Vorn nodded slowly. "That is a wise perspective. But you must understand, the information we learned today changes how we see your species. Before, we thought humans were weak. Your bodies are soft. You have no natural weapons. You cannot fly or breathe underwater. We thought you had survived on your planet only through luck and technology. But now we know the truth," the Quillen said, its voice trembling. "You are not weak at all. You are strong in ways we cannot understand. You have made peace with death itself. You have turned predators into prey." Yuna looked uncomfortable. "We are not as special as you think. We are just ordinary people." "That is exactly what the survivors of the Great War of Kellion said," Vorn replied. "Right before they conquered 3 solar systems." Dalhyun did not know what the Great War of Kellion was, but it sounded serious. "We are not conquerors," he said firmly. "Humans just want to learn and explore. That is why we joined the Galactic Union." The crystal being leaned forward, its faceted body catching the light. "Perhaps you do not realize your own potential. On our worlds, we fear the creatures of our planets. We build walls to keep them out. We create technology to destroy them. But humans do the opposite. You invite the creatures into your lives. You keep them as pets. You eat them as food. You have made your fear into power. Zik, the furry creature, squeaked again. Vorn translated. Zik asks if all humans can eat insects, or if it is a special ability that only some humans have. Yuna smiled at the question. Anyone can eat insects. It is not a special ability. It is just a choice. Some humans do not like the taste, so they do not eat them. But any human can if they want to. Even human children? Vorn asked. Yes. In fact, in Korea, children often eat beyondaeji, the silkworm snacks. It is sold at schools and festivals. The aliens seemed stunned by this. They sat in silence for a long moment, processing the information. Finally, Vorn spoke. I have one more question. A personal question, if you do not mind. Go ahead, Do-hyun said. Would you eat an insect right now? If one was available? Do-hyun looked at Yuna. She shrugged. If there was one, yes, I would. So would I, Do-hyun agreed. Vorn reached into a bag it carried and pulled out a small container. Inside the container was a preserved insect, similar to a large beetle. It had been bought from an Earth import shop on the station. Vorn explained. A curiosity item, never meant to be opened. This is from your planet, Vorn said. Would you really eat it? Do-hyun looked at the insect. It appeared to be a fried diving beetle, a common snack in some parts of Asia. It was perfectly preserved, probably meant as a decoration or a novelty gift. Yes, he said. I would eat it. Vorn carefully opened the container and handed it to Do-hyun. The other aliens at the table leaned back, their faces showing disgust and fascination in equal measure. Do-hyun took the beetle and examined it. It looked crispy and well prepared. He brought it to his mouth. Around him, the cafeteria had gone completely silent again. Every alien in the room was watching. Some had climbed onto tables to get a better view. Others were recording with their devices. Do-hyun put the beetle in his mouth and bit down. It crunched loudly, and the sound echoed through the silent cafeteria. He chewed thoughtfully for a moment, then swallowed. Not bad, he said. A little old, but still tasty. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, someone in the back of the cafeteria screamed. The scream set off a chain reaction. Students began talking, shouting, running. Some laughed hysterically. Others cried. A few fainted on the spot. Vorn stared at Do-hyun with an expression of pure amazement. You actually did it, it said. You actually ate it. Yes, Do-hyun said simply. It was just a beetle. Yuna smiled at her friend. It was a spider, black and shiny, with a red marking on its belly. This, Professor Velix announced, is the lecture continued for another hour. Professor Velix showed image after image of Earth's deadly insects. Black widow spiders, brown recluse spiders, fire ants that attacked in swarms of thousands, tsetse flies that carried sleeping sickness, bot flies that laid eggs under human skin. With each new creature, the class grew more and more horrified. By the end of the hour, only half of the original students remained in the room. The others had left, unable to handle more information about Earth's nightmarish wildlife. Do-hyun found himself becoming bored. He had seen all of these creatures before, either in real life or in nature documentaries. To him, they were just part of the world. Nothing special. Nothing to be afraid of. Yuna was even less impressed. She had grown up in a rural area outside of Bizen, where insects were everywhere. Her grandmother had taught her which ones to avoid and which ones were harmless. Some, her grandmother had said, were even delicious. The thought of food made Do-yoon realize something. His stomach was growling. It was almost lunchtime, and the blue bread from breakfast had not been very filling. "I am hungry," he whispered to Yuna. She nodded. "Me too. I hope the cafeteria has something good today." "I doubt it," Do-yoon replied. "Yesterday, they served that purple soup. It tasted like nothing." Yuna made a face. "I miss Korean food so much. What I would give for some good street food right now." "Tteokbokki," Do-yoon said, his eyes closing as he imagined it. "Spicy rice cakes with fish cakes." "Hotyak," Yuna added. "Fresh and warm, with honey and nuts inside." "Beyond Beiji," Do-yoon continued. Yuna laughed quietly. "Silkworm larvae. My brother loves those." "I do too," Do-yoon admitted. "They are crunchy and a little chewy. Perfect with beer." They were so lost in their conversation about food that they did not notice the professor had stopped talking. They did not notice that the entire class was now silent. And they did not notice that Professor Velix was staring directly at them. "Excuse me," the professor said loudly. Do-yoon and Yuna looked up quickly. The professor's forearms were crossed over his chest. His small eyes were fixed on them with intense curiosity. "I am sorry, Professor," Do-yoon said quickly. "We were not paying attention." "I noticed," Velix replied. "You seem to be having an interesting conversation. Perhaps you would like to share it with the class." Do-yoon felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. He did not want to explain that they had been talking about food while everyone else was scared of deadly insects. But Yuna, who was always braver than him, spoke up. "We were just talking about Korean street food," she said. "The lecture made us hungry." The professor raised one of his eyebrows, a gesture he had learned from studying humans. "The lecture about deadly venomous creatures made you hungry?" "Yes," Yuna said simply. The class was completely silent. Every alien was staring at the two humans with confusion and disbelief. Professor Velix walked closer to their row. His silver robes flowed behind him like waves. "This is fascinating," he said. "Most species would lose their appetite after seeing such disturbing images. But you became hungry?" Do-yoon tried to explain. "Well, Professor, we have seen these creatures many times before. They are not so scary to us." "Not scary?" The quillin in the front row spun around, its tentacles waving wildly. "Not scary? Those creatures are living nightmares." "They are just insects," Yuna said with a shrug. "They are small. We are big. As long as we are careful, they cannot hurt us." The green-skinned student stood up suddenly. "You said the lecture made you hungry. How is that possible? What connection could there be between deadly insects and food?" Do-hyun and Yuna exchanged glances. Should they tell the truth? It seemed too strange to explain. But the aliens were waiting for an answer, and there was no point in lying. "Well," Do-hyun began slowly, "in Korea, we eat insects as snacks." The silence in the room became even deeper. If silence could have weight, this silence would have crushed them all. Professor Velix's translator device made a strange noise. It clicked and whirred, as if it was having trouble processing the words. Finally, it spoke in the professor's language, and his reaction was immediate. All four of his arms dropped to his sides. His mouth fell open. His eyes, which were already large, seemed to grow even larger. "I am sorry," he said. "My translator must be malfunctioning. Could you repeat that?" "We eat insects," Yuna said clearly, "as snacks. They are sold in markets and at festivals." The translator worked this time, but the professor still could not believe it. "You eat these deadly creatures?" he asked, pointing at the screen where an image of a scorpion was still displayed. "Yes," Do-hyun said. "Fried scorpions are quite popular in some Asian markets. They are crunchy." A student in the back of the room fainted. Nobody moved to help them. Everyone was too shocked to move at all. The silkworms we were talking about, Yuna continued, are a very common snack in Korea. They are called biondaeji. You can buy them in cups from street vendors. She pulled out her communication device and searched for an image. When she found one, she held it up for the class to see. The screen showed a paper cup filled with cooked silkworm larvae, brown and glistening. 3 more students fainted. Professor Velik slowly walked back to his podium. He pressed a button on the control panel and the image of the scorpion disappeared. He pressed another button and the lights in the room became brighter. He seemed to need a moment to think. Let me understand this correctly, he said finally. Humans not only live with these deadly creatures, not only share their planet with them, but you also hunt them, cook them, and consume them? Yes, both humans said together. For pleasure? Yes, they taste good. The professor sat down heavily in his chair. His 4 arms hung limply at his sides. He looked like someone who had just received terrible news. I have studied humans for 20 standard years, he said quietly. I thought I understood your species. But this information changes everything. Da-hyun felt a little bad. He had not meant to shock everyone so much. It is not that strange, he said, trying to help. Many cultures on Earth eat insects. In Thailand, they eat fried grasshoppers. In Mexico, they eat roasted chapulines. In Australia, they eat witchetty grubs. Every name he mentioned seemed to hit the aliens like a physical blow. Some covered their ears. Some closed their eyes. Some just stared into space, unable to process what they were hearing. The scorpions, the Quillen said weakly. You eat the scorpions? The ones with the deadly venom? The venom is destroyed by cooking, Yuna explained. When you fry them at high temperature, the poison breaks down. They become safe to eat. Safe, the Quillen repeated. Safe. You made deadly poison safe by cooking it. Yes, that is right. The Quillen made a strange bubbling sound and then collapsed. Its friends had to drag it out of the room to get some air. Professor Velix finally stood up again. He walked to the center of the stage, his movements slow and careful, like he was walking on ice. I think, he said slowly, that we need to revise our understanding of human evolution. I always believed that humans survived on Earth despite the dangerous creatures around them. But now I am beginning to think that humans survived because of those creatures. He looked directly at Do-yoon and Yuna. His expression was a mix of fear, respect, and scientific fascination. You do not see these creatures as threats, he said. You see them as resources, as food. You are not prey that lives in fear of predators. You are the ultimate predators who consume the predators themselves. Do-yoon shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had never thought about it that way. Eating insects was just something people did. It was normal. At least, it was normal on Earth. Professor, Yuna said politely, we do not think of ourselves as predators. We are just humans. We eat what is available. That is exactly what makes you terrifying, Velix replied. You do not even realize how extraordinary you are. You consume deadly creatures as casual snacks, and you think nothing of it. You have normalized behaviors that would drive other species to extinction. He turned to face the remaining students in the class. Less than half of the original number were still present. The rest had either fainted or fled. I want you all to remember this moment, the professor said. Today, we learned something that no textbook has ever taught us. Humans are not survivors. They are not victims of their hostile planet. They are apex predators in the truest sense of the word. They have conquered not just their environment, but every creature within it. The students who were still conscious nodded weakly. They looked at Do-yoon and Yuna with new eyes. No longer were the humans seen as the small, fragile newcomers of the Galactic Union. Now, they were something else entirely. Do-yoon leaned toward Yuna. I think we said too much, he whispered. Yuna smiled slightly. Maybe, but at least now they know the truth about us. The professor dismissed the class early. He said he needed time to update his research notes and revise his entire lecture series. As the students filed out, many of them gave the two humans a wide berth, staying as far away as possible. Do-hyun and Yuna walked out together, their stomachs still growling with hunger. The cafeteria? Do-hyun asked. The cafeteria, Yuna agreed. Behind them, they could hear the whispers of the other students. The words insane and impossible were used many times. But there was a new word now, repeated more than any other. Predators. Professor Velix waited for the students who had run out to return. After a few minutes, they came back slowly, their faces still pale with fear. The Morvani student who had fainted was now awake but looked very sick. Its friends were fanning it with their notebooks. I understand that these images are disturbing, the professor said gently. But this is exactly why we must study them. Knowledge is our best defense against the unknown. The class slowly settled down, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Before, the students had been relaxed and casual. Now, they sat on the edges of their seats, ready to run at any moment. Professor Velix pressed another button, and a new image appeared on the screen. It was a close-up of a centipede's face. Its many eyes stared at the camera. Its jaws were open, showing sharp fangs that dripped with venom. This is the giant centipede of Earth, the professor announced. It can grow up to 30 centimeters long. Its bite contains a powerful venom that can cause extreme pain, swelling, and in some cases, death. A Quillen student raised its tentacle. Professor, how can such a small creature be so dangerous? An excellent question, Velix replied. The danger is not in the size of the creature, but in the strength of its venom. One bite from this centipede contains enough poison to kill a Quillen within hours. The Quillen made a sound like a deflating balloon. Several of its tentacles went limp with shock. Yuna leaned toward Do-hyun. My grandmother used to find these in her house all the time, she whispered. She would just pick them up with her hands and throw them outside. Do nodded. My mother would step on them with her slipper. They both had to cover their mouths to stop from laughing. The aliens around them were shaking with fear, but to the two humans, this was almost funny. Professor Velix continued his lecture. The centipede is what we call an ambush predator. It hides in dark places and waits for prey to pass by. Then it strikes with incredible speed, injecting venom before the victim can react. He showed a video of a centipede attacking a mouse. The small creature caught the mouse and wrapped its body around it. Within seconds, the mouse stopped moving. The alien students watched in horror as the centipede began to eat. On Earth, the professor said, these creatures live in homes, in gardens, and in forests. Humans encounter them almost every day. The green-skinned student in front of Do-hyun turned around again. This time, its face was twisted with disbelief. Every day? It asked, you see these monsters every day? Not every day, Do-hyun replied honestly, but often, especially in summer. How are you not dead? The alien asked. Do-hyun thought about it. We have learned to live with them. We check our beds before sleeping. We do not walk barefoot in the grass. We are careful. The alien shook its head slowly. Your planet is a nightmare, it said. Then it turned back to face the front, hugging itself with its long arms. Professor Velix changed the image again. This time, a swarm of flying insects appeared on the screen. They were black and yellow, with large wings and sharp stingers. These are called Asian giant hornets, the professor announced. His voice was even more serious than before. They are perhaps the most terrifying flying insects on Earth. The image zoomed in on a single hornet. It was the size of a human thumb, with powerful jaws and a stinger that looked like a small needle. These creatures live in large groups called colonies, Velix explained. When they feel threatened, they attack together. A swarm of these hornets can kill a human in minutes. A student from the back of the room raised its hand. It was a Krellian, a species that looked like a large bear with 6 legs. How many hornets are in one colony? The Krellian asked. Usually between 100 and 300. The professor answered. The Krellian made a low growling sound of fear. And humans live near these colonies? Yes, Velix said. In fact, in some parts of Earth, humans accidentally disturb these nests while working in their gardens or walking through forests. The results are often deadly. He showed a video of a hornet nest. It was the size of a basketball, hanging from a tree branch. Hundreds of hornets flew around it, their wings making a loud buzzing sound. The venom of the Asian giant hornet is extremely powerful, the professor continued. It contains chemicals that destroy flesh and attack the nervous system. Even one sting is incredibly painful. Multiple stings can cause organ failure. Dahan remembered something from his childhood. When he was 8 years old, he had been stung by a regular bee. It had hurt a lot, and his hand had swelled up for 2 days. But his father had told him that it was nothing compared to a hornet's sting. My uncle was stung by one of these, Yuna whispered to him. He said it was the worst pain of his life. Like being stabbed with a hot needle. Did he survive? Do-hyun asked. Yes, but he was in the hospital for 3 days. On the stage, Professor Velix was showing more images of the hornets. Close-ups of their stingers. Pictures of the damage they could cause. Videos of them attacking other insects with brutal efficiency. The Asian giant hornet is also known as the murder hornet, the professor said. They have been known to destroy entire beehives, killing thousands of bees in just a few hours. They cut off the heads of the bees and take the bodies back to feed their young. The screen showed a video of this happening. A group of hornets attacked a beehive, slicing through the smaller bees like they were nothing. The alien students watched in silent horror. This is what humans share their planet with, Velix said. These are the creatures that fly through their skies and build nests in their trees. And yet, humans continue to live. They continue to build cities and farms and roads, all while surrounded by these deadly insects. He paused and looked directly at Do-hyun and Yuna. The presence of our human exchange students gives us a unique opportunity, the professor said. Perhaps they can help us understand how their species has survived in such a hostile environment. All eyes in the room turned to the 2 humans. Do-hyun felt very uncomfortable under so many stares. He said, not sure what to say. We are just careful. We stay away from nests. We wear protective clothing when we go into the forest. But surely you have technology to destroy these creatures? A student asked. Surely you have hunted them to extinction by now? Yuna shook her head. No, we have not. They are part of our ecosystem. They help control other insect populations. We do not want to kill them all. The class fell silent. The idea that humans would choose to live alongside such deadly creatures was clearly shocking to them. Professor Velix nodded slowly. This is precisely what makes humans so fascinating to study. They do not flee from danger. They do not hide from predators. They adapt. They learn. And they continue to thrive. He changed the image on the screen. Now it showed a map of Earth, with red dots marking all the places where dangerous insects lived. The map was almost completely covered in red. As you can see, the professor said, there is no escape from these creatures on Earth. They exist everywhere, in every climate, on every continent. And yet, 8 billion humans call this planet home. A student raised its hand. It was a small creature that looked like a floating ball of light. Professor, is it true that humans sometimes keep these insects as pets? Do-hyun and Yuna exchanged glances. They both knew people who kept insects as pets. Beetles, especially, were popular with children in Korea. Yes, it is true, Professor Velix confirmed. Humans have been known to keep many dangerous creatures as pets, including venomous spiders and scorpions. This was too much for some students. 3 more aliens stood up and left the room, their bodies shaking with fear and confusion. The professor sighed. I think we should take a short break. Please return in 10 minutes. The remaining students began to talk among themselves in hushed voices. Do-hyun could hear them discussing what they had learned. Words like insane and impossible were repeated many times. Yuna stretched in her seat. I had no idea our planet was so scary to them, she said. Do-hyun nodded. I knew Earth was classified as a death world, but I did not think simple insects would cause such a reaction. Should we tell them about mosquitoes? Yuna asked with a small smile. About how they kill more humans than any other animal? Do-hyun laughed quietly. I think that would make them pass out. Let us keep that information for another time. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the aliens around them try to process what they had learned. The green-skinned student in front of them was being comforted by its friends. The Quillen was drinking something from a bottle, its tentacles still trembling. Do-hyun thought about his home on Earth, about the forests and mountains and rivers, about the insects and animals that lived there. He had never considered his planet dangerous. It was just home. But now, seeing it through alien eyes, he understood why others might be afraid. He wondered what the professor would show them next. And he wondered how the class would react when they learned the full truth about humans and their deadly world. The break ended too quickly. Students slowly returned to their seats, though some chose to sit further away from the two humans. Professor Velix returned to the stage and called for attention. Now, he said, let us continue. We have only begun to explore the dangers of Earth's insect life. There is still much more to learn. The screens came to life again, showing a new creature. Do-hyun recognized it immediately. The morning sun of planet Vareth shone through the large windows of the Galactic Academy. The light was purple, not yellow like on Earth. But Park Do-hyun had stopped noticing such things months ago. He had been living on this alien world for almost a full year now, and strange colors had become normal to him. Do-hyun walked through the wide hallways of the academy. Students of many different species moved around him. Some had 4 arms. Some had scales. Some floated instead of walking. And some looked like nothing Do-hyun could describe with human words. But they all had one thing in common. They were all here to learn. The Galactic Academy was the most famous school in the known universe. Only the best students from each planet could attend. Earth had only recently joined the Galactic Union, so humans were still very rare here. In fact, there were only 12 humans in the entire academy. Do-hyun was one of them. He entered the large lecture hall and looked for a seat. The room was shaped like a half circle, with rows of seats going up like stairs. At the bottom was a big stage where the professor would stand. Floating screens hum in the air, ready to show images and videos. Do-hyun spotted his friend Kim Yuna sitting in the middle section. She waved at him with a small smile. Yuna was also from Korea, and they had become close friends since arriving at the academy. It was nice to have someone who understood his language and culture in this strange place. He climbed the stairs and sat down next to her. The seat was designed for many different body types, so it felt a bit strange under him. But it was comfortable enough. Good morning, Yuna said quietly. Did you eat breakfast? Just some of that blue bread from the cafeteria, Do-hyun replied. I still cannot get used to the food here. Yuna nodded in agreement. I miss rice. Real rice. The rice substitute they have here tastes like wet paper. They both laughed softly. Around them, other students were taking their seats. A tall being with green skin and large black eyes sat in front of them. To their left, a creature that looked like a walking plant settled into its seat, its leaves rustling gently. Today's class was xenobiology. It was the study of life forms from different planets. The class was taught by Professor Velix, a Marvani scholar who was considered one of the smartest scientists in the galaxy. Do-hyun found the class interesting, though sometimes the information was hard to believe. The door at the bottom of the hall opened, and Professor Velix walked in. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. His head was large and round, with small eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He wore the traditional robes of a Marveni teacher, which were silver and flowed behind him like water. "Good morning, students," Professor Velix said. His voice was calm and deep. A small device on his chest translated his words into many different languages at once, so everyone could understand him. "Good morning, Professor," the class replied together. Professor Velix walked to the center of the stage and lifted one of his 4 arms. The floating screens came to life, showing the image of a blue and green planet. Earth. Du-Hyan sat up straighter in his seat. It was always strange to see his home planet on an alien screen. It looked so small and fragile from space. "Today," the professor began, "we will continue our study of dangerous life forms in the galaxy, and we will focus on one of the most deadly planets ever discovered." He paused for effect. The students leaned forward with interest. "Planet Earth," Professor Velix said. Whispers spread through the lecture hall. Many students looked at Do-hyun and Yuna with wide eyes. Do-hyun felt his face grow warm. He was not sure if he should feel proud or embarrassed. "Earth is a Class 4 death world," the professor continued. "This means that the conditions on Earth are extremely hostile to most forms of life in the galaxy. The gravity is high. The radiation from its sun is intense. The weather patterns are violent and unpredictable. And perhaps most terrifying of all, the life forms that evolved there are incredibly dangerous." A student in the front row raised a tentacle. It was a quillen, a species that looked like a mix between an octopus and a butterfly. "Professor," the quillen asked, "if Earth is so dangerous, how did humans survive?" Professor Velix nodded at the question. "That is an excellent question, and one that scientists are still trying to answer. Humans are what we call persistence predators. They evolved to chase their prey over long distances until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They can run for hours without stopping. They can heal from wounds that would kill most species. And they can eat almost anything." More whispers filled the room. Do-hyun glanced at Yuna. She had a small smile on her face, clearly enjoying the attention. "But today," Professor Velix continued, "we will not focus on the humans themselves. Instead, we will look at some of the other creatures that share their planet. Creatures so deadly, so terrifying, that even experienced galactic rangers refuse to visit Earth without heavy protection." The screens changed. Now they showed a dark image of something moving in shadows. Do-hyun squinted at it, trying to see what it was. "We will study," the professor said slowly, "Earth's insects." The image became clear. It was a scorpion, its tail raised and ready to strike. Its shell was black and shiny, and its claws looked sharp enough to cut through metal. Several students in the hall screamed. The quillen in the front row actually fell out of its seat. A Marvani student near the back fainted completely, and its friends had to catch it before it hit the floor. Do-hyun and Yuna looked at each other in confusion. They did not understand why everyone was so scared. To them, it was just a scorpion. They had seen many scorpions before. In fact, Do-hyun remembered eating fried scorpion at a night market in Seoul when he was a child. It had been crunchy and a little bit spicy. Professor Velix raised all 4 of his arms to calm the class. "Please, everyone, remain calm. The creature you see is only an image. It cannot hurt you here. But the students were not calmed. They continued to whisper and point at the screen with fear in their eyes. Yuna leaned close to Do-hyun. Why are they so scared? She whispered. It is just a bug. Do-hyun shrugged. I do not know. Maybe they do not have insects on their planets. That would explain a lot, Yuna replied. On the stage, Professor Velix began his lecture. This creature is called a scorpion. It has a venomous stinger on its tail that can inject deadly poison into its victims. There are over 2,000 species of scorpions on Earth, and many of them can kill creatures much larger than themselves. He pressed a button, and the image changed to show a close-up of the scorpion's stinger. Yellow venom dripped from its tip. The venom attacks the nervous system, the professor explained. It causes extreme pain, paralysis, and eventually death. There is no known cure that works for all species. The green-skinned student in front of Do-hyun turned around. Its large black eyes were filled with terror. How do you live with such monsters? It asked Do-hyun. His voice was shaking. Do-hyun thought about the question. To him, scorpions were not monsters. They were just animals. Small animals that lived in the desert and sometimes got into houses. We are careful, Do-hyun said simply. We shake our shoes before we put them on. The alien's eyes grew even wider. It turned back to face the front, but Do-hyun could see it was trembling. Professor Velix continued his lecture, showing more images of scorpions hunting, feeding, and fighting. Each image made the class more and more afraid. But to Do-hyun and Yuna, it was like watching a nature documentary. Interesting, but not scary. The professor finished the scorpion section and moved to the next creature. A giant centipede appeared on the screen, its many legs moving in waves. This time, 2 students actually ran out of the lecture hall. Do-hyun watched them go with surprise. He had seen centipedes many times in his grandmother's garden. They were creepy, yes, but not worth running away from. This lecture is going to be very interesting, Yuna whispered to him. Do-hyun nodded. He had a feeling that by the end of the class, the aliens would look at humans very differently. And he was not sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. The screens changed again, showing more of Earth's deadly insects. And the screaming continued.